plug-in. Oh, there it is down there. See if I find that. That's it, 100%.
It's in the back,
It's
Mark.
in the back.
It's in that corner.
It's coming around.
It's coming around.
Yeah, yeah. Ask them if they have written comments to please give them to the clerk.
And y'all, as you're preparing for your comments, if you happen to have written comments that you want to submit for the record, you're welcome to do that. Just give them to the clerk after you have your chance to speak. Are we all finished? We got one more. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Oh, I will. Just a reminder. Okay. All right, thank you all. All right, so we'll start the public comments again. First up, we have Jennifer Slotin. Again, a reminder, we'll have a 3-minute time limit to speak what you want to say, and then please remember to state your name and your address. And if you do have comments you want to submit, feel free to give them to the clerk. Jennifer?
All right, Jennifer Slotin, 1110 Meadowlark Lane, from the Farms of Meadowlark subdivision. I care about the village of Marvin and have been actively involved in what happens here over the last few years. I served on the planning board and attended council meetings. To say I'm disappointed in what has been going on is an understatement. The actions of the council and other board members show a true lack of leadership. I have personally worked with Mary Scoot on the planning board and know that she is an advocate for the people of Marvin. There is no other person in the village of Marvin who knows our ordinances and government better than she does. And I don't think there is a single person in this room who would disagree with that. It is very clear to me that the reason she was forced from her staff position is because she knows the rules, knows the ordinances, and won't let developers and others with financial interests in the village walk all over the people of Marvin. She has fought tirelessly for the people. Whether you agree with her or not, she plays by the rules, fact-checking and researching to make sure she was doing what is right by the people and the law. I'm not sure how many council members or how many people in the public are aware, but there have been emails discovered through public records requests that show that Mary was targeted for removal because she wasn't going to let people who didn't even live in Marvin, gain financially at the expense of Marvin residents. Here's an excerpt from an email from Chip Zawicki to Ken Orndorff and Joe Polino. Ken and Chip don't even live in Marvin and are developers. Chip writes, quote, "The last thing we want, and I think your personal experience will support this, is to have Mary involved in any way. She will single-handedly screw everything up," end quote. In the same email, they say, quote, "I am worried they are going to let Mary go hog wild on the ordinances. If she does that before developing a master plan, the ordinances will be so burdensome that it will have a major negative impact on any master plan or ability to develop," end quote. This is coming from a developer sent to another developer and the mayor of Marvin, who then worked to remove Mary from her staff position and is now working to try to remove her from her council position. They are saying that her appointment was illegal, trying to distract from the real issue here, which is keeping her out of a position where she can keep a vigilant eye on what's best for the residents. Why should we let developers create ordinances that benefit their development and line their pockets? Shouldn't it be the ordinances that frame development? The fact that the council failed to meet for 2 meetings and couldn't get a budget passed, therefore shutting down the village, is absolutely unacceptable. And all of this is because they didn't want to deal with the Mary Scoot issue. There is a saying that I think fits the situation perfectly. It says, "They fear those with knowledge and control those without it."
Next up, we have Tiffany Cheppel.
Tiffany Cheppel, 1221 Larkridge Court, also of the Farms in Meadowlark. I also wanted to express my support for Mary Scoot. She's been a tremendous friend to our neighborhood. She's opened our eyes in situations where developers were trying to take advantage of our neighborhood, all while it's happening in front of our then council, and everybody said, "Oh, they'll be fine with it." And Mary brought it to our attention, and we were able to stop those developers. So her knowledge of ordinances, her ability to be a voice for residents in Marvin is invaluable, and she needs to be involved. I also wanted to say how disappointed I was in the 3 of you for your inactivity in getting together and making quorum. I don't care what is going on politically or if you agreed or not with this appointment. The 3 people, that's all it took to get that budget passed, and you all didn't show up to the table. Now, you did make sure that Firethorn was covered to get the fireworks going, and I'm sure everybody was appreciative of that, but you left everybody else high and dry. No park, no budget, people with community garden. It was a disgrace, and it was a lack of leadership on your part.
Chris Smith.
Hi, Chris Smith, address 1216 Meadowlark. So a little bit different here, right? We're all neighbors. There's only, what, 7,000 people that live in Marvin? You all are going to see each other at the grocery store. So I just want to lay that out. I understand that some of you are upset at the way the seat transitioned. I understand that. But that said, skipping work for a month is unacceptable, right? We had a critical NCDOT meeting about this dangerous intersection here. The majority of you didn't even show up for it. I'm assuming it's related to this, I don't know. It's clear there are personal issues occurring here. Serving as a representative is supposed to be a privilege. This is not about you, it's not about your ego. Let's get back to work.
Thank you. Next up, I have Mike Gilboy.
Hello, my name is Mike Gilboy, 126 Stonehurst Lane, that's in Wyndham Hall. I am a resident of Marvin, also on the advisory board at Firethorn Country Club. I've received a lot of forwarded emails as well as read on social media and heard a lot of rumors about the 4th of July fireworks at Firethorn. I'm here to set the record straight. The Village of Marvin Council had nothing to do with the approval of the fireworks, even though a member of council and our mayor are members of Firethorn. On Thursday, June 28th, the general manager of Firethorn called me and told me she had a problem. The village would not approve the fireworks due to the lack of a public hearing per the Village of Marvin ordinances. I left my office and went to help her get the process approved. I called the Village of Marvin administrator, who said there's nothing she could do because of the ordinance and a lack of a public hearing. We then called the Union County Fire Marshal, who said the fireworks could not happen without an approved permit. The next call was to the county manager of Union County, who said she would investigate it. One last phone call was to a member of the county commissioners, who said he would investigate it as well. On Friday, June 29th, the county commissioners, with the assistance from the county manager, added this item to their agenda for the already scheduled Monday, July 2nd afternoon meeting. Union County has historically left the power of approval for fireworks in the hands of each of the municipalities. But due to the circumstances of Marvin, the county commissioners would vote to approve it, which they did. They understand that the fireworks display was for the enjoyment of residents of all ages and should not be used as a pawn in a political game. Please watch the video of the meeting on the Union County website. There were no special favors or bending of the rules, as some residents have stated, and Firethorn did not do an illegal fireworks display without a permit, as a few residents of Marvin have also stated in emails sent to a list of many residents of the village. For those of you making an issue of this, please get your facts straight before spreading incorrect rumors or making false statements about something that is intended for the enjoyment of families that was then sadly and disgustingly turned into a political issue. Thank you.
Christy Maher, 8306 Woodlawn Drive. I'm here to speak tonight on behalf of Mary. I've watched Mary work for the village in 5 different major roles over the past 13 years, and I know that Mary is good for Marvin. She's smart, she's diligent, hardworking, and she can help this council a lot based on what I've seen lately, and also the people of Marvin. She's going to bring valuable knowledge and oversight to the council. So having different opinions in government is a good thing, but I hope everybody can move past all of their personal differences for the good of our community. Over the last 13 years, Mary has served as the village clerk and the park developer, the planning and zoning consultant, the town administrator, the village planner, and that's just an incredible amount of experience that it would be a shame to let her waste. What I found most valuable, though, is Mary's planning board experience. You've heard a lot about that already tonight. Mary served on the planning board for 9 years and is chairman for 4 of those years. With 2 big developments on the horizon, and we've heard a lot about those developments, her expertise at the council level is going to be invaluable. Both the Marvin Town Center that's behind, the Marvin Town Center and Marvin Gardens, which is behind my neighborhood, I've been fighting that one for a long time, fighting to make that a good development, is going to be planned in the next few years. And there's no other current council member that has any planning board experience at all. I think a lot of people in the village will agree that Marvin's strict protective zoning is what keeps us the #1 community in North Carolina. We limit density and we're committed to green space. We honor our Marvin land use plan, which, by the way, I think Mary was the one that designed it. So I'm pretty sure she can uphold that as developers come into our community. She's also very good at negotiating with developers. Everybody knows it's a negotiation. When developers come into Marvin, they know the ordinances. Everything's very clear, right? But they always want to look for exceptions, which is fine. It's a business, right? But the thing is, you need to have someone that knows the ordinances backwards and forwards and is going to uphold them and actually get something good for the community. When we were planning, Hersher came and developed Newtown Gardens, Mary researched the traffic studies. She's very good at that. She found that the corner of Newtown and Providence would have an F rating after the development came in. So Mary was then instrumental in negotiating all of the turn lanes. You know those little turn lanes at Providence and Newtown? Mary negotiated those, and she did that at the developer's expense. Can you imagine what that intersection would have been like without those? Can you imagine what it would have been like if someone like Mary hadn't been involved and stood strong for Marvin? So she faced a lot of backlash from the developers, but because she won't back down, she's always had Marvin's back. So she's hardworking, honest, and incredibly smart. I'm thankful, and I think many people here are thankful that she's willing to serve, and we know she'll be a tremendous asset to Marvin.
Next up, I have Michael Scoop.
Michael Scoop, 9610 Belmont Lane. For full disclosure, I'm the husband of legally appointed councilperson Mary Scoot, who sits on this board. These comments are not mine. These are from a petition that was signed online by many, many people, and we thank you for those. I'm going to read as many as I can in 3 minutes. Barbie, I'll be emailing you everything so you don't have to worry about taking notes. I'm not going to say the names, I'm just going to read the content from a multitude of people that have contributed, and I'll go quick. At some point in this country, we will have to return to civil discourse as our primary problem-solving path, instead of intimidation and lawlessness. I support Mary and her rightful position on the council. The hallmark of greatness is not our ability to find the like-minded, but rather the ability and desire to find common ground with those with whom we disagree. Thank you, Mary. I support Mary as Ron's replacement on Marvin Council. We have valued Mrs. Scoot's advice and support over the years regarding issues concerning the character and integrity of our neighborhood and those of the village of Marvin. Any information the council may wish from us in support of Mrs. Scoot will be gladly provided. As I have worked with Mary on the planning board for years, I know without a doubt that if Mary states her appointment is legal, then it is. Mary never does anything without checking out all the facts and confirming them. I implore you as a resident of Marvin, follow the laws and respect due process. I support Ron Salameo's right to leave behind a qualified representative to represent me and allow him to appoint a responsible successor to his elected seat. Further, I implore you to fully respect the need for Mary Scoot's professionalism, skills, and transparency on the council. Do the right thing, not your thing. Over the years, I have personally served the village of Marvin in numerous voluntary positions. During that time, I have always had great respect for the hard work and diligence I always observed as Mary served the village of Marvin and all its residents. Working alongside of Mary for 5 years on the village planning board, I feel she has a high moral compass and the utmost integrity. She tackles each and every ordinance, variance, and task with enthusiasm and is willing to perform the necessary due diligence. She is the type of person we want paving the way. She has a backbone and will wrestle issues not for the faint of heart. I stand behind her, alongside of her, and would work for her in a moment's notice. In my humble opinion, Mary is a true public servant and is in no way, shape, or form attempting to feather her nest. Stand tall, Mary, for you are the type of leader I want for my village. We support this petition. This is a democratic village, not a fiefdom, and there is no reason for this childishness. I join other Marvin residents who are fed up with the village business not being carried out because of some of our elected leaders are not able to work with others who have the best interests of the town in mind and not personal gain. I've read the statutes and Councilman Salameo can nominate a successor,
10 seconds.
for his remaining time and vote on that successor. The fact that the village business has ceased and the majority of reps did not attend our NCDOT meeting in June is unacceptable. Let's get back to work.
Thank you. Next up I have, I'm not sure to read this right, Ed Heyer.
That's Ed Hill.
Ed Hill, okay, I couldn't read the right.
Yeah, that's not my strong suit.
Mine either.
3405 Rainbow Drive, we're at Valhalla Farms. I'm here tonight to ask you to get it together and represent us. You were elected to represent all of us, and you're not doing that. And that's a failure on your part and the leadership or lack of it in this council. We're blessed to live in a wonderful area. This is beautiful. People who visit us are just amazed at how wonderful this small little area we have is. And yet you are an embarrassment to us. I encourage you to put aside your differences, do the job for which you were elected, and let's get back to decency.
Thank you, sir. I have a bill sale, but it says you don't want to speak, so. That's correct. Okay, thank you for being here. And next up I have John Cheppel.
Good evening. My name is John Cheppel. I live at 1221 Blackfish Court in Florence, Delaware. My point is, I would like for y'all to get the minutes from the December 12th meeting, the recording available to the public. I don't know what the holdup is. I've heard that it's Mayor Polino's notes that need to be finalized. Whatever it is, y'all need to get the recording for that meeting on the available to the public. We need to be able to hear that meeting. It was a vital meeting. A lot of things happened in that meeting, and the public we are justified to hear what happened. And that's being withheld from us for whatever reason. Put it behind you. Be professional. Run this government as you should, and quit being petty. It's just ridiculous. It makes us look like fools, and it's unheard of. So please, put all this behind us and move forward to watch out for this community and for what we've got going on here. And it's a beautiful place, and we want to keep it that way.
Thank you, sir. Mark Peterson.
Yes, Mark Peterson, 1129 Berwick Court. I guess I just want to say, I've lived here since 2012. I just recently got involved in government, was appointed to the planning board. I find I'm in total agreement with a lot of comments I hear regarding civil discourse as well as transparency. I will say this, I'm currently, in terms of a land use plan and so forth, the last one that was officially adopted currently is 4 pages, was it 1994? So there's drafts that a lot of people are working on for almost a decade to plan. I happen to believe that good planning is essential to a good small community. I lived in this community for 5 years, moved back to Florida, came back here, looked all over Charlotte, and moved right back to Marvin because I love it. So that's why I chose to serve. And if you look at my app for why I want to be on the planning board, it specifically says to keep out big development. So there's a group of people who, including all the landowners that we recently met with, who said they would like to do some small town development, small town. That's exactly what I want. And I find that when I read the draft, that I didn't realize that Mary wrote most of it, but I'm in agreement with virtually all of it that's regarding the village center. I think that there's this terrible thing going on where everyone is suspicious of other people. Like Chip Sawicki, I know well. He is not a developer. He doesn't know how to put a Lego set together. This guy he is not a developer. So if you think he's a developer, he's not. Is he a stay-at-home dad with a little too much time and a big mouth? Yeah, might be that. I would tell him that to his face. But he is not a developer. There's other people like me, like Mike Lavelle, who are being labeled as these bad people who want to build all this giant development. It's just not so. The motivation for our service is just as pure as Mary's or anybody else's. And so I joined to engage in civil discourse and try to find common ground about, hey, what do we want to do here? There's not much left in Marvin to develop, so let's get this right. A master plan.
Your 3 minutes was up.
No, it isn't. I got
He's
56
timing it.
seconds, Mayor.
Okay, well, I was timing it too.
Please, me, do not interrupt this
My
meeting.
goodness.
We have the official time. Well, we'll give you another 20 seconds to go, please.
Thanks. All right, so anyway, a master plan is something that allows organized development so that things don't look like crap. We only got one shot to do this right. So we went out and we listened to the landowners. The meeting that Mary had the event happen, they canceled that. John Jones was supposed to give a report to the entire board about what the landowners wanted and how we could work and partner with them to do something small and that's acceptable to all of us. So I would just ask everybody to not be suspicious of people unless you know. I promise you, I have not met a single person who has a financial interest in this. And our service to Marvin is just as pure as yours. We might not agree on what we both want.
10 seconds.
But I can assure you that there is no conspiracy here for people to get rich.
Then why not let me ask you questions?
No.
Excuse me, this is not the time to address any of the comments. And we'll get to that later in the meeting. So thank you all for coming. So next up on the agenda, I have mayor comments, so bear with me as I will read my statement and submit it for the record. Good evening, and thank you all for coming here tonight, and thank you for your public comments. In the past, I've made it a habit of rarely commenting on village matters. However, I feel compelled to take this opportunity to share with you my thoughts. Obviously, the past month and a half have been very challenging for many of us, including our newly hired administrator, Christina Alphin. Thank you, Christina, for being here, and I personally want to welcome you in your new role. This misguided ship will soon be rerouted on the right path, I can assure you. The way in which you have handled yourself and your new position shows us we made the right choice in our selection as village administrator. I'd also like to welcome back Mayor Pro Tem Nick Dispenzier from his vacation. It goes without saying that you have been missed. It was unfortunate that all of our staff members had to miss their opportunity to work and earn a paycheck, which amounted to 6 working days, including the 4th, which was a holiday for all, as well as Monday the 9th and today the 10th. It is also unfortunate for the constituents of the Village of Marvin for any inconvenience and unintended consequences this may have caused, since this was a total of 10 days that we were shut down. Those who use the park on the regular basis for their children, themselves, or their pets should understand that the action of the minority of council created this event to occur. The past 30 days have taken us into uncharted waters, and I can assure you, as we work through this situation, we, acting individually but also as a majority of this board, took a great deal of direction from our village attorney, who has helped guide us on this matter. We again, as a majority of council, feel that the actions of the minority of the board, referring to Councilman Ron Salameo and Robert Epps, were invalid on the meeting held on May 31st. No one wants to shut down the government, and given the circumstances, we were truly faced with a decision that was unavoidable. Let me be clear. We, the majority of your council, did not want to shut down any part of this village. The shutdown was due to not having an approved budget from this council by the June 30th deadline. I'll get to that in a minute. This shutdown also created a situation for fireworks display at Firethorn, as they did not get their approval from the Village of Marvin in time. I was happy to see that some individuals stepped up and were able to get the approvals that were needed. A special thanks to Mike Gilboy for working with Firethorn staff, and also our county commissioners who ended up stepping in during the village shutdown to have the fireworks approved at the Union County level. Yes, unlike false reports, you may have heard the fireworks display at Firethorn have been officially approved by the county commissioners at their meeting held on Monday, July 2nd. We thank the county commissioners for their swift action on this matter. And by the way, no phone calls were made to anyone at the county level on my behalf. Just a side note, I did not talk to even the top person at Firethorn. I did not talk to. We couldn't do anything. For those who were surmising what went wrong or how this could happen, many of you were limited on getting the real facts. You may have read the comments on Nextdoor, or you read the propaganda that was being spread. Let's just call that our Marvin fake news. That said, I hope you all understand that we as your council members were limited to what we could comment about during this situation. I encourage all of you going forward to be wary of any unofficial information and information from anonymous sources. Again, I can assure you that all of these decisions were made after numerous discussions, individually, as council members, with our village attorney, which also led to conversations with top attorneys at the North Carolina School of Government, and even contacts within our North Carolina Attorney General's office. This situation has given you all an insight on what has been happening behind the scenes here at the village in the past. I've had the honor of sitting in this chair as your mayor for over 4.5 years. I think that's important because I've been witness to many games some prior council members have played in the past. Let's face it, friends, we rarely have meetings where more than 3 or 4 people show up. If you receive our blast and get our meeting agendas, you may glance at it to consider if you might attend. You only need to go back to the beginning of many of our meetings prior to December 2017, when we were sworn in, and listen to many of the recordings where agendas were changed without proper notice to you, the public. To me, transparency is everything. Since gaining the majority in December of 2017, when we were sworn in, we, the new majority, have put forth processes and tried to implement rules where notifications to our community were made within 48 hours, 2 full working days before any of the meetings were held. We had agreed on a rule not to add anything to any of our agendas within 48 hours of any meeting. It was just a few months ago, I read it in the April minutes, where we as council were working on language to come up with a rule specifically where we could not appoint, hire, or remove any position without being placed on the agenda at least 48 hours before our meetings. Unfortunately, we didn't come up with the exact language we were seeking for hiring and appointing. However, and this is important, I urge you all to go back and listen to Councilman Ron Salameo in open session back in April, where he looked at me and said, and I'm paraphrasing, we don't need that rule. We don't need that specific rule, as this is about trust, referring trust between the council members. Since adopting the 48-hour rule and agreeing not to add anything to the agendas, your newly elected council is proudly held to that standard until our May 31st meeting. At that meeting, Councilmember Ron Salameo asked to suspend the rules, while Mayor Pro Tem Nick Despenzier was on vacation, giving them a 2-to-1 advantage over Councilmember Kim Vandenberg. Salameo added his resignation to the agenda and also added an appointment to replace his upcoming vacant seat as a council member. Without getting into the many errors they made that night, and after consulting with our village attorney, the majority of council believes they did not follow our village procedures. This was a work session meeting, May 31st. The action of adding items to a work session meeting is not allowed. We typically hold work session meetings to address items that were tabled or whether further discussion is needed on a matter from the previous regular meeting. Just over 2 years ago, we appointed Robert Epps, he's not here tonight, because of a council member's resignation. In that process, council asked for applications from the community for the council position. All applicants were considered and interviewed by village council. I would think a fair process for the village would be to afford any member of the community this opportunity, as we did for Mr. Epps back then. I would encourage Mrs. Scoot to submit an application to be considered. I need to be careful as not to talk about Mrs. Scoot's employment in particular, but I can tell you that because of her actions as an employee of the Village of Marvin, legal action has been taken up with the village by a local developer. I won't go into the details of the case, as this is all public record for any of you to review. The original complaint filed by Ms. Scoot against the developer was thrown out of court, and since that time, the developer chose to file a defamation of character lawsuit against Mrs. Scoot and a complaint and lawsuit against the village. Mrs. Scoot was an employee at the time where the village was then required to legally defend her actions. The cases are currently waiting to be heard in the federal court. Since releasing Mrs. Scoot from her duty as acting administrator in December, she has filed numerous public records requests for village employees since their employment. This included myself as mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Dispenzier, during our time served as council members. These records requests go back years for some employees, and for me all the way back to December of 2013. She did not request the council records from Councilman Salameo, Epps, or Beatty. These public records include text messages, phone calls from private phones, and private emails, as well as village emails. Excuse me. Needless to say, this was a very big ask in the way of a public records request, especially for a small town. And to be clear, she has every right to ask for all of this information. I will tell you that our time with the attorney in reviewing all of these documents has added a great deal of cost to the village and added many hours of work to staff. This also has prompted us to provide cell phones to council members and certain staff members at an additional cost to the village of $5,000 annually. These kinds of actions, of course, are her rights and yours as well. However, I do question the motive on how this action is in the best interest of the village. In regards to the budget, let me be clear, and this is important, you all, because this is where the facts get a little distorted. It had been discussed at length since our January meeting and was ready at length since our January meeting, and the budget was ready to go as early as May 25th, 2018. There was plenty of time to have this budget approved. I'd like to take this time to thank our finance officer, Chris Robertson, for all of her hard work of getting the budget together for council to review and make changes. Ms. Robertson should not be held accountable in any way on the issue, as she delivered to council everything that we asked of her. She was also our acting administrator over the last 6 months at the time during this budget. Chris, I can't thank you enough for all of your dedication to this job and this community. Knowing that Mayor Pro Tem Dispenzier would miss the May 31st meeting and both June meetings due to his vacation schedule, the council planned well in advance to have the budget approved a month before the June 30th deadline. The public hearing for the budget was set for the May 31st meeting. In that meeting, we opened the public hearing. No one showed up to speak. The public hearing was then closed. At that point, council was to make a motion to approve and pass the budget, as we met all of the requirements that were needed. It was only then when Councilman Salameo surprised us by suggesting in his motion to postpone the budget approval until the June 12th meeting to give the public a few more weeks to look at it. Just after his motion was approved, Councilman Salameo made another motion to suspend the rules and added his resignation as well as his intention to appoint Mrs. Scoot to council. An unsanctioned swearing in of Ms. Scoot took place, and the meeting was ended shortly after that by a 2-to-1 vote, and no other business on the May 31st agenda was discussed. In the subsequent meeting, June 12th, there was no quorum since Councilman Epps, I believe, emailed, and Councilwoman Vanderburg were not available. In the June 28th meeting, I, as your mayor, was out of town. Again, quorum was not recognized, with just Councilman Epps and Councilwoman Vanderburg. Again, the majority of council did not recognize Ms. Scoot as a duly elected council member, and they did not follow the village procedures. The special meeting on June 30th, called by Councilman Epps, was invalid. Keep in mind, a special meeting requires either the mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, or 2 council members to call a special meeting. The meeting was also required to be posted on our village website, which was not met. Again, this is unfortunate that it happened, but it did not need to get to this point. Councilman Salameo and Councilman Epps never once reached out to our village attorney to discuss the actions they planned to take at the May 31st meeting, but chose to consult with an outside attorney of their own. My guess is they were trying to make the most of their 2-to-1 vote advantage during this meeting. It is again the belief of the majority of your current council that the actions taken at the May 31st meeting were invalid. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of our staff members, I see a few in the back, and Chris, for all of their efforts during this past month and all that they had to endure. With that, I'd like to proceed with the village's business at hand. I will submit this document to be reflected in the official minutes for this meeting on July 10th, 2018. So next up on the agenda, we have the consent agenda. Do we want to pull anything?
Yeah, I need to pull B. There's a couple of typos. I can go over those with Barbie now, or I can just show her, whatever you guys want to do.
Okay.
Barbie? Barbie, do you want to go over those now?
That's up to you.
I mean, I can't. It's just a couple of quick.
If there are minor changes,
Yeah.
then we can make the changes. If you want to approve them as they're amended, then we can do
Okay.
that.
Yeah. The first one is it's on page 1, section number 2, second.
Is this for the budget or the regular session?
I'm sorry, this was for the budget, sorry. Number 2, paragraph 2, there is an extra letter in there. I know that's minor. Then the next one goes to the regular meeting, and it is on page, I don't know what page it is, but it's under number 10, new business. You got it? Oh, so instead of letter C, instead of responses in the first, it should be correspondence. And then D, it should be they instead of the. Agreed? And that's it for the minutes.
Okay.
And then H and I, the 2 public hearings for a CUP and a TUP, we're going to change that date, July 26th, later on in the meeting. So I don't know if
So
we
just
want
pull them now and
pull them
approve them
now.
later, is that okay?
Yeah, where do you want to put them? When you go to,
I guess just put them under new business.
Well, actually,
Or-
we pull them under the date changes, because there is
Okay.
discussion consideration
Perfect. Can we do that?
of meeting schedule changes, that's A,
Okay.
11A.
11A?
Yep, so we'll put them there. And then that's all I had to pull from the consent agenda.
Okay.
I did have some questions for Councilman Epps regarding his bonds, but he's not here, so I don't know if you're okay, if you guys are comfortable in keeping that on, otherwise we'll just approve that. Ms. Scoot, we made a vote not to recognize you, so we're asking that,
know that the moon is made of cheese, it doesn't make it true.
and neither does your swearing in and the validity of it. So I'd like to kindly ask you to remove yourself from the seat at the table, and the board does not recognize you at all as a duly elected council member. You're welcome to take it, excuse me,
I refuse.
that's fine. Should you interrupt this meeting at any time, I'll remind you of the state statute 143-318.17, where you may be asked to leave. So when you interrupt, I will remind you, and if you keep interrupting, I'm going to have to stop the meeting and ask you to be removed.
I understand that. Is there any
So,
way for this
again,
meeting or-
I have not recognized you. It's not your turn to
Take the oath
chance.
of office.
I'm sorry.
I will appoint a majority of the board
Excuse me.
by a quorum
Excuse
of
me.
that board, whether or not I believe that
You are out of
that is
order.
irrelevant.
You are out of order. We are not going to hear
I'm just
you.
trying to go through the consent
This
agenda.
council made a vote
I'm just trying to go through the
recently.
consent agenda. I'm not trying to do anything other than that. I'm
we're
trying to
not,
follow
we're
Rule
not going
11G,
to
which says
hear
the only items
anything you
that
have
should
to
be
say.
non-controversial routine should be on the
So I'm going to
consent.
ask the motion of council to make a vote is to ask Ms. Scoot to be removed. She is welcome to stay in the audience, but I'm going to take a vote to have Ms. Scoot removed from this table and to ask her to please refrain from interrupting the meeting. I'm calling for that vote. Further discussion? All is in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Please sit down, Ms. Scoot.
Could you repeat the comment?
I'm sorry?
We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Okay, I made a motion to have Ms. Scoot please remove herself from the seat and to not interrupt the meeting anymore. She chose, the motion was passed in a 2-to-1 vote.
You pass on what?
2-to-1 vote. Mayor Pro Tem Nick Despenzier and also Councilwoman Vandenberg voted in a 2-0 vote. So I'm going to ask you kindly to please remove yourself from the table and please stop interrupting the...
I have a right to be in
Okay,
the seat. I was
so
appointed by majority.
we need to make a
In a
motion.
meeting that had quorum. If you are required by your oath of
I
office
am not
to follow
required by, this
the
is
North
not a court of law. If you
Carolina
have something to
Constitution and the North
you
Carolina
have the
laws and
right,
general statutes,
you have the right
which
to take this to a
require that I
court.
should lawfully
I'm
hold my
going to
seat
have
until the
to
state
call
judicial
for a
proceeding
recess and
rules
involved
otherwise.
because we're not going to
And
get
until
our
that
business
proceeding
done
takes
and we
place,
are a village.
I hold my seat
We are a
pursuant
village.
to section
Call for a
128.
Motion to call for a recess. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion, Nick? Motion passes.